What's up, YouTube? This is Politically Incorrect. So, one of the things that irritates me is when I see people who are trying to minimize the impact of slavery or trying to uh, lessen the stain of slavery. Sort of sweep it under the rug and talk that kumbaya nonsense. Um, you see it on the left with the Democratic coons who will tell us that slavery was 160 years ago, who will tell us that, look, the white people around the day had nothing to do with that. And, ever since slavery, we've had equal opportunity. Um, you know, uh, it's on us. And, uh, we don't, we're not directly impacted by slavery, so we don't deserve reparations. Even though you have families and descendants of the Holocaust who were never directly impacted by the Holocaust who still receive reparations to this very day. You had family members of those who were affected by the internment of Japanese Americans, which was only for like a couple of years, by the way. And they received reparations about 35 or 30 years ago. But whenever we talk about reparations, it's a problem. Even though a figure that I've read that was eye popping is that if we were paid the amount that they estimate that was taken from us or that was due to us from the hundreds years of slavery and the 100 years of Jim Crow and the continued economic disparity between races when it comes to pay, that we would all collectively be paid, the 45 million black Americans in this country, we would all collectively be paid $65 trillion, which I can't help but think would probably make us the wealthiest ethnic group in this country. That's how much wealth has been taken from us. First of all, let's get something straight. Yeah, it was people like us who look like us, I should say, that sold us for material goods. But let's not forget who purchased us. Okay, they weren't the ones over in Africa that were beating us over here. We're talking about over here. We're talking about in America. Okay, and let's talk about what usually happened when we were being purchased and that ship or that boat traveled from Africa to North America. Hundreds of thousands of us didn't survive. We were beaten. The ones who were the most ruly were beaten to death and thrown overboard for the sharks. Our women were raped. Okay, that's a part. That's a. I think that's a part of this whole equation that doesn't get mentioned enough. Remember, our women came from Africa. Our women were, for the most part, dark skinned. Some may be a little bit lighter than others, but mostly dark skinned. All these light skinned black women didn't just pop up overnight. We didn't go through some monumental ice age, which lightened the complexion of our women. Okay, we were all collectively in the deep south getting those gorgeous, deep southern humidity tans. Okay, so something was making us lighter complected. Some of us. We know what time it was. But this is the thing, man. Were there some black sellouts who, for whatever reason, had wealth and uh, they had slaves? Yeah. Why would that be brought up? Is that something that's honorable? A coon owning slaves? And when you say, if somebody were to say black people, black landowners having white slaves, I think the term you probably would use would be indentured servants. Poor poor white people who worked on the plantations for a fee, for a nominal fee. That existed, okay? But increasingly, after 1790, after 1800, 99.9% of slaves were black, okay? That's the reality. They were black. That's what we're talking about, okay? And all of this misinformation that be put out here, I saw something that said, "Oh, well, see, look, this is how slavery is overblown. Look, by 1860, only 1.4% of all Americans owned slaves." Well, I got something for you, Jiminy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Guess what? 1% of this country, the people, 1% own about 80% of the wealth. So what are you saying? You're not saying anything. 1860, I think our population was around approximately 30 million in this country. So even if you go 1.4%, guess what? There's still over 400,000 landowners. 400,000 landowners that own slaves, primarily in the South. There's still a lot of fucking people. 400,000, and you gotta think to yourself, these guys had a lot of fucking slaves. That's millions of people in bondage. So what the fuck are you talking about? That shit don't work on Mike Sewell. I'm about to say too raw. That shit don't work on Mike Sewell. You can use all the diversion tactics that you want to. Slavery negatively impacted us. Okay? And it had everything to do with race. Everything to do with race. If it didn't have anything to do with race, then why were almost all the slaves black? Really, all the slaves were black. I don't count the white few indentured servants. They still received a nominal fee, and they really weren't treated like slaves. Okay? We were treated like property. Property. We were treated worse than animals. And there's always this thing where they try to make to make themselves feel better. They try to make it like, oh, it was a family, it was a family affair down there in Mississippi. I remember my mammy. She was a gorgeous black slave. Her name was Mabel, and she poured me a tall glass of orange juice every morning. Yeah, and she used to hold me close to her bosom. Now, I didn't try to look at my mammy like that, but she had quite a bosom on her. And she fixed me those great hominy grits. Oh, it was a lovely, lovely time. I think people got a misunderstanding about the old ways of the South. We all loved each other. We took care of our slaves. Fuck out of here. Let one person who's black act unruly and see what time it is. Okay? If everything was so peachy keen, why was there an underground railroad? Why were there so many rebellions? Why were there so many runaway slaves? I know, because they were the problem. They were the problem, see? Yeah, yeah. It was them, wanting to run away from all that paradise, all that beatings and all those whippings, you know, like the famous picture of that slave from 1863, former slave, runaway slave, all those fucking keloids on his back. I know you've seen it from the whippings. That's the reality that they try to hold down and hunker down. Nat Turner wasn't just simply killed when the rebellion happened. I think it was in 1841, the rebellion that he led. He was massacred. You hear me? He was, I believe, hanged, then I think shot. I know he was hanged. He was shot, beheaded, dismembered, de-skinned. I think they sold his skin for lampshades. That's some shit that we heard about in Nazi Germany. They cut his penis off and they sold his organs and his parts. And I think like what was it, a novelty shop? They completely tried to erase him from memory. But you want me to be mad about OJ? Then after the Civil War, when the amendment that was supposed to free us, technically free us, they left that loophole where they could imprison us, which became another system of oppression. Hence, to this day, the disproportionate amount of African American men that are incarcerated. It's really, to be honest with you, they're a loophole for another form of slavery. Then, when we entered Jim Crow, they had another strategy. Because of their fear of black men, and I'm talking about white men, generally speaking, they built this new Gestapo. It was called the KKK, but also another the Gestapo more legitimate group was built, and they called them the police. The police were initially built to terrorize black people because that's basically how they tried to keep us in line through fear and enforcement. Then, when they say you pull yourselves up by the bootstraps, and then when we did do that and we made progress, those white people who weren't quite on the same level as the more prosperous blacks, what did they do? They act like little children and went down into towns where black people were prosperous and burnt it down and act a fucking fool. But when they do it, it's called an insurrection. When we, go out and get mad about something that's done toward us as a group, they say we're rioting. So down goes Black Wall Street, and down goes, what was it, Wilmington, one of the most progressive towns in the United States. Down goes Wilmington, down goes Rosewood, down goes all these different examples of black uh, cities and black towns where there was a lot of wealth just destroyed. But they always tell us to pull ourselves by the bootstrap. How are we gonna pull ourselves from the bootstrap when you keep taking our fucking shoes off? You keep taking our boots away from us. So here we are today. We still have a lot of issues. Is this as bad as it was 100 years ago? No, I'm not saying that. It's not as bad as it was 100 years ago. No. But to say that there still isn't systemic racism is bullshit. Absolute bullshit. You have white people with criminal records who statistically are doing better financially than black men with no criminal record and college degrees. Now, someone explain that to me. Because if you're a black man with a criminal record, you're almost pretty much going to be shut out. So the only thing I'm saying is we already have enough people in this country who are trying to do away with slavery in our schools. The critical race theory is a fact, it's not a theory.